Hey gang, Chris Angel coming at you for Marketing for the Rest of Us. It is another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us. This is actually, I believe, episode 14. So let's talk about being real and prospering. Be real and prosper. We're actually hosting an event in Spokane, May 9th from 1 to 5 called Be Real and Prosper. But I wanted to unpack some of the meaning behind that, right? And I actually said this last week and they were like, oh, you should open with that when we do the event. So I want to play with that here with you and articulate some things behind what it is to be real in marketing, in business, in life. I think, here's what I've noticed. What I've noticed is that there are a lot of cliches that get thrown around, right? Or a lot of advice that gets regurgitated. So if we're talking about marketing, there's a lot of marketing advice that gets regurgitated. If it's life, personal development, relationships, there's a lot of quotes and sayings that get regurgitated. And what happens is we end up not thinking for ourselves, right? In other words, we all say the same thing, and so then we just start to assume that that's actually how it is, like that's what it's supposed to be. And we don't question, we don't analyze, we don't look critically at what's being said to understand why it's being said or if there's truth to what's being said. And so then we all just start copying each other, and it's the blind leading the blind, right? And if you think of it like a bell curve, I think what happens a lot of times is there are inventors, early adopters, there's the masses, the laggards, and then like the people who just never do anything, right? And I think what happens is it's the masses in the middle of this bell curve that I'm concerned about, us humans, right? The whole point of marketing for the rest of us, for all of us who aren't the inventors or the early adopters. What do we do with marketing? What do we do? We're sitting here in the middle of it all because either we're not intellectually wired for, or maybe we don't have the time for being an inventor or an early adopter. We're running a business, for crying out loud. We have a life to live. We're not out there like Gary Vaynerchuk being an early adopter for technologies and telling the rest of the world, oh, now the new thing is LinkedIn and now the new thing is... There's all of us in the middle of this bell curve. And what are we supposed to do with marketing? And so what we do is we look to the early adopters and we go, oh, well, that's what we're supposed to do. And then we all tell each other, oh yeah, this is what I heard you're supposed to do. This is what I heard you're supposed to do. And this is what I'm saying, like this is the blind leading the blind. And so Here is, I believe, part of the solution to this. Part of the solution is that we have to realize that there is a questioning of the way it is that's required for us to really understand why we do what we do, okay? So in marketing, let's just put it in marketing because that's the context of this show. Our event on May 9th, Be Real and Prosper, will actually go beyond just marketing. We'll talk about marketing, but there are 8 speakers that will address additional topics, right? But it's important to understand that if we're going to grow, that's the issue, right? Is growth in business. It's about how do we grow from here to there. If we're going to grow, then we can't live on the crumbs of other people's advice. We can't live on the scraps that are being passed around the table from you to me and me to you about how it's supposed to work. We have to start to look and question, why was that said? Why are people saying that? We could call this the gray area if you want, right? Like the gray areas. Everything is not so absolute, guys. Everything is not so absolute. There is nuance to things. Marketing is not one way. We think it is. We're like, because who are we to question the early adopters and the inventors? We think we're supposed to be, oh, they must know. I don't know. I'm not a marketer. They're a marketer. So they must know. And then we don't question and we just blindly adopt stuff. And it turns into groupthink. And we're all saying like the same thing. But we have to start to question, right? And here's the thing about questioning what we're told, right? Is that it's uncertain. It feels risky. This is why being real is scary for people. And it's why I believe that being real is the next evolution in business, right? Or in humanity, let's just say. Like, I think we're tired of fronting and posturing. I think what we want is something real. But in order to have a real experience, we have to question the status quo. We have to question the bell curve of advice that we've all been regurgitating to each other. And inside of that, I think what you'll start to find is as you question, you're going to come in contact with your own truth. You're going to come in contact with what you find to be true. Not because they told you it was true, not because the early adopter, Gary Vaynerchuk, told you it was true, but because you found something. You found a nuance in the gray areas of questioning things where you're like, I don't know if that's absolutely true. I tried it this way and it actually worked. This show, Marketing for the Rest of Us, is an example of that, right? I'm saying, like, I have this thought. I have this gut feeling that there is a way for the rest of us to behave inside of marketing that would actually feel congruent and real and authentic with who we individually are. And the consumer, the public, would actually be open to receiving it. They'd be refreshed by it, in fact. And I'm saying it to you in this show. The show is the vehicle for that. But to do that, for me to create a show like this, requires that I step out behind the false assurance of the way it is in marketing and to assert my own beliefs, assert my own truths. This is what's uncomfortable. We as humans, we seek safety, we seek security. And to go into the gray areas where things aren't certain is a risk. It's a risk. But if we don't go into the gray areas or into the nuances of of all the common and typical cliche advice that's out there and question it, then what happens is we end up not growing. So I want you to think of, again, I mean, a lot of people don't think of themselves as leaders. I don't know where you fit on that spectrum, but I believe we're all leaders, right? And part of our job as leaders, especially if you're the one who wants to grow. Listen, if you want to grow, that's a trait of a leader. You're wanting to go somewhere. You're not wanting to stay where you are. You want to go somewhere. In marketing, in life, in finances, in business, right? In relationships, like, you're a leader. And if you're a leader, then it requires that you go out and start to question what has been told to you and think for yourself in the nuances and the gray spaces to find the thing that works. Your willingness to question, your willingness to explore the uncertainty of gray space, of things that aren't fully known, to question common logic. Your willingness to do that actually gives those you're leading permission to do the same. Right? It's interesting right now. We're seeing this in politics. There's a ton of people, right, who have thrown their hat in the ring for the presidential campaign on both sides. The other day, I think I said that I read there were 200 plus Democratic candidates and 84 plus Republican candidates. And there are people now starting to question the way it is in order to lead a group of people into a new understanding. It's the same in marketing. It's the same in your business. We as leaders get to explore and question the way it's been said, the way it's been done, and look at what would be possible, what would be available for the people we're trying to lead, for ourselves even, if we could question what is commonly adopted as the truth, right? So when we think about being real, like, in order to question the common truths, in order to explore the gray areas, there is an element of being real with yourself and your own questions, the questions you have about marketing, about life, about relationships, the things where you're like, look, people have forever said, oh, budgeting and money and finance is really important. You should budget. My friend Leanne, who's one of the speakers at the May 9th event, right, is talking about how budgeting doesn't make sense. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Like, I always thought I was the stupid one and I just didn't get it. Everybody else got budgeting. I didn't get it. But evidently, I'm not alone. And because she was willing to go out into the gray areas and explore that thought she had She is setting me free to think differently about budgeting inside a business, or money even inside a business. I'm doing the same with marketing. I'm going out and I'm exploring the areas in marketing that I've had questions around, that I challenge, right? And inside of that, my hope is that it not only sets me free, but it sets you free, right? And I'm passing the baton to you because you need to go out and start to question what's been told to you. You need to get very real about your questions, your doubts, your concerns. You also need to get very real about your intuitions. Like, you have promptings, you have things where you're like, I feel like this isn't right. This other thing seems more aligned or congruent with who I am. And you need to be real with yourself about those promptings. Here's what won't create growth, is if we just stay where we are and hope everybody else spoon feeds us their truth. Because you being spoon fed somebody else's truth doesn't set you free. It may have set them free, and it may have given you access to something for you to see for yourself, but their truth doesn't set you free. Your truth sets you free. And this is at the heart of being real. Being real with yourself, your questions, your intuitions. And as you start to step into being real about all of it, the gray area of it all, you set us free to be real with it too. So, my belief, my thesis, my assumption is that in the space of being real or getting real, what you'll start to find is your life will start to feel more prosperous. You won't be living inside of a huge question mark. Listen guys, that's what happens when you rely on somebody else's truth to set you free. Then all you're left with is a big question mark. You're like, I don't know, they said to do it this way. This doesn't quite feel right. Who am I to say it's wrong? I don't know. And you can't orient yourself to your own truth. And so you live your life out of feeling like somebody told you the right way to do it, but it doesn't feel right. Have you heard that? I think it's the Albert Einstein quote, right? I mean, that's who's credited with it. Everyone is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And the bell curve of humanity has been spending time listening to squirrels tell them how to climb trees, and we're fish, and we need to find our own truth about what feels right. But that takes courage. It takes courage to be real. But like I said, I think on the other side, can you imagine a fish who spent its life trying to climb a tree, feeling that it's stupid, only to finally discover that it's actually a fish? And once it lives in accordance with or in alignment with that it is a fish, swimming in water, not climbing trees, can you imagine the prosperous life the fish must now feel? Prosperity isn't about money all the time. It is about the experience of you living your life. You living in a way that feels like the world is for you, like God is for you, like the universe is for you. That is what prosperity feels like. And you can't access that living inside of somebody else's truth. And you have to find your own truth. And to find it, you have to go explore the gray areas. You have to challenge conventional wisdom. That is ultimately, I mean, as much as this show is about marketing, that's a life principle. You, in your skin, are on your journey to find your truth. That is what you're here for in life school. You get 80 to 100 years to figure it out. To figure out your truth. To figure out that you're a fish, not a squirrel. So that you can live a life that feels free and prosperous. Otherwise, what's it all for, right? What is it all for? Listen, you don't have to show up and do 5 to 7 Facebook posts a day because Facebook said so, because some other social media marketing expert said so. You get to decide how to use Facebook's a tool. You get to decide how to use Facebook. But in order to do that, you have to get real about your questions about Facebook, your questions about social media, your frustrations about it all, your promptings and intuitions about it all. And then in the space of being real about it and having courage to explore it, you actually get to find your truth. And in finding your truth, it sets you free. And you finding your truth and setting yourself free frees everybody else who you're leading to find their truth. And that, friends, is marketing in 2019. If you want to market It's not about selling. It's not about selling your stuff. It's about engaging in a conversation that sets people free. And when they're set free by you exploring the nuances, what happens is that you have earned their trust and they trust you. And now you're not a charlatan trying to sell something. You're actually somebody who has earned their trust because you are willing to be real and transparent and vulnerable and scared and courageous. And in that space, gang, I really believe that that's where you get to step into your power. You get to step into your life. You get to step into your business in a way that feels prosperous. So that's it for today's episode. Again, if you're in Spokane or you want to fly to Spokane, May 9th from 1 to 5, we have an event. There's 8 speakers. It's called Be Real and Prosper. I will link up the event link here in the comments of this post. It's better with others. So if you have friends, it's better to bring others, because now as you all come to the event together, you get to share this conversation afterwards. Go out for drinks after, or even do a book club. I don't care. Just get together after over weeks and weeks and weeks and continue this conversation of exploring the nuance, the gray areas, challenging each other's assumptions about how it is so that you can find your truth and build a business that you're proud of. All right, gang, until tomorrow, take care.